The Galactic Military Academy floated in the darkness of space like a small metal moon. Station Verath 7 had trained soldiers from more than 40 different alien species for almost 300 years. Every year, young warriors came from distant planets to learn how to fight, how to lead, and how to protect their people. The station was famous across the galaxy for producing the finest military officers anyone had ever seen. Instructor Kelvan had worked at the academy for 40 years. He was a Torvian, a species known for their shimmering scales that changed color with their emotions. His scales had seen every shade over his long career. He had trained thousands of cadets from dozens of worlds. He thought he understood soldiers. He thought he knew what made warriors tick. But the humans confused him. On this particular evening, Kelvan stood at the edge of the recreation hall, watching the cadets relax after a hard day of training. The large room was filled with noise and laughter. Young soldiers from different planets gathered in groups, sharing drinks and stories. In one corner, the Crixian cadets were being loud as always. They were tall creatures with sharp claws and thick armored skin. 3 of them stood on chairs, acting out a battle scene while their friends cheered. One of them was telling a story about how he had killed 6 enemies with his bare claws during a border conflict on his homeworld. The other Crixians roared with approval. Nearby, a group of Meldari sat in a circle, their large dark eyes half closed as they shared memories through their telepathic connection. They were reliving a famous battle from their history, and occasionally one of them would speak out loud for the benefit of non-telepaths nearby. They described great victories with obvious pride. Even the Anthean, who were usually quiet and serious, had loosened up. The insect-like warriors clicked their mandibles as an elder among them recounted the story of how their hive had defeated an invasion force 2 centuries ago. The younger Anthean listened with wide compound eyes, clearly impressed. But in the far corner of the room, away from the noise and the boasting, sat the humans. There were 3 of them tonight. Lieutenant Commander Nathan Cole was a man in his early 30s with short brown hair and tired eyes. He sat with a small electronic tablet in his hands, reading something quietly. Beside him, Sergeant Megan Walsh and Corporal Daniel Price played a simple card game. They spoke to each other in low voices and sometimes laughed softly, but they never raised their voices. They never drew attention to themselves. Kelvan had noticed this pattern many times before. In fact, he had noticed it with every group of human cadets that had come to the academy over the past 15 years. The humans trained harder than almost any other species. Their scores in combat simulations were always near the top. They were strong, fast, clever, and determined. But when the training day ended and other species gathered to share their war stories, the humans stayed quiet. Kelvan walked closer to the human group, pretending to inspect a wall display. He wanted to listen. He wanted to understand. Nathan Cole looked up from his tablet and nodded politely at the instructor. "Good evening, sir." "Good evening, Lieutenant Commander," Kelvan replied. His scales shifted to a friendly green. "I hope you are enjoying your rest period." "Yes, sir, thank you." And that was it. No stories, no boasting, no tales of great victories or narrow escapes, just polite words and quiet activities. Kelvan remembered an incident from a few weeks ago. A young Crixian cadet named Thrak had approached Daniel Price during a meal break. Thrak had been curious about the humans, and like all Crixians, he loved a good war story. "Human," Thrak had said, sitting down across from Daniel without asking permission. "I have heard your species has fought many wars. Tell me of your greatest battle. Tell me how many enemies you have killed." Daniel had looked up from his food with an expression that Kelvan could not read. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he simply shrugged. "Nothing worth telling," Daniel said. Thrak had been confused. He pressed harder, asking about specific human conflicts he had heard about. But Daniel just shook his head and returned to his meal. Eventually, Thrak gave up and walked away, muttering about how boring humans were. After that incident, Kelvon had done something he rarely did. He accessed Daniel Price's official service record. What he found shocked him. Daniel Price had served in the Human Alliance military for 12 years. He had received 3 separate commendations for exceptional bravery. He had survived the siege of Callisto Station, a terrible battle where human forces had held a position against overwhelming enemy numbers for 47 days. More than half the defenders had died. The survivors were considered heroes throughout human space. Nothing worth telling. Kelvon had checked the records of the other humans at the Academy. He found similar patterns. Nathan Cole had led a rescue mission that saved 300 civilians from a collapsing colony ship. Megan Walsh had single-handedly defended a hospital from raiders for 6 hours until reinforcements arrived. Their records were filled with acts of courage and skill that would make any Crixian warrior jealous. Yet they never spoke of these things. They never boasted. They never even mentioned them unless directly asked, and even then they gave only short answers. Kelvon returned to his quarters that night with a mind full of questions. He sat at his desk and began writing notes. He documented every observation he had made about human behavior over the years. The patterns were clear and consistent. Humans did not share their combat experiences. Humans did not celebrate their military victories. Humans did not seem proud of their warrior heritage. Why? Every other species in the galaxy took pride in their military history. Even species that had committed terrible acts in their past would eventually come to terms with their history and speak of it openly. That was how warriors processed their experiences. That was how they bonded with each other. But humans were different. Humans were silent. Kelvon decided that he needed answers. He would bring this matter to the Academy's senior staff. He would request access to more detailed human records. He would solve this mystery no matter how long it took. He did not know that his questions would lead him to truths that would change his understanding of the galaxy forever. He did not know that some silences exist for very good reasons. All he knew was that the humans were hiding something, and he was determined to find out what. The senior staff meeting room was located in the central tower of Station Varath 7. It was a circular chamber with a curved table in the middle and large windows that showed the stars outside. The room was designed to make everyone feel equal, no matter what species they belonged to. Kelvon arrived early. He carried a data pad filled with his notes and observations from the past several weeks. His scales were a nervous yellow color that he could not control. He knew his colleagues might think he was wasting their time. Asking questions about human behavior was not a normal topic for these meetings. Director Velshan entered the room first. She was a Meldari, tall and thin with large dark eyes that seemed to look right through you. Her species had limited telepathic abilities, but she could not read the minds of other species. Still, her centuries of experience made her excellent at understanding body language and emotions. She had led the Academy for over 60 years. "Kelvon," she said, nodding at him, "I received your request for agenda time. You wish to discuss the human cadets?" "Yes, Director. I believe there is something important we are missing about them." Other instructors filed in over the next few minutes. Instructor Ythmari was an Anthene with large compound eyes that reflected the lights in the room. She was responsible for teaching hive tactics and group coordination. Instructor Borax was a massive Crixian whose scarred hide showed the marks of many battles. He taught close combat and physical training. 2 other instructors, a Velian named Sooth and a Dramian named Gortel, took their seats quietly. When everyone was settled, Director Velshan gestured for Kelvon to begin. Kelvon stood and activated the display screen behind him. It showed a simple chart comparing social behaviors across species at the Academy. For the past 15 years, I have observed a pattern among human cadets that I cannot explain, he began. Every species represented at this academy engages in what we call warrior bonding rituals. They share stories of combat, they boast about their achievements, they celebrate their military heritage. This behavior helps soldiers form connections with each other and process their experiences. He tapped the screen, bringing up a section highlighted in red. Humans do not do this. In 15 years, I have never heard a human cadet voluntarily share a war story. I have never seen them boast about their kills or their victories. When other species ask them about their combat experiences, they give short answers or change the subject. Instructor Borax made a rumbling sound in his chest. Perhaps humans are simply weak. Perhaps they have no victories worth sharing. That was my first thought as well, Kelvon admitted. But the evidence does not support it. I have reviewed the service records of every human cadet who has attended this academy. Their records are impressive. Many of them have survived battles that would make Crixian veterans proud. Yet they speak of these things as if they are not important. He brought up Daniel Price's record on the screen, with the details of the siege of Callisto Station. This human survived a 47-day siege against impossible odds. More than half of his companions died. When asked about it, he said there was nothing worth telling. The room was quiet. Even Borax seemed uncertain how to respond. Instructor Yithmari clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. Perhaps humans have poor memory for combat experiences. Some species do not retain detailed memories of stressful events. I considered that possibility, Kelvon said, but I tested it. When I asked human cadets about non-combat experiences, their memories were excellent. They could describe their homeworlds in great detail. They remembered the names of their family members, their childhood friends, their favorite foods. They spoke at length about their cultures and traditions. He paused, letting his words sink in. It is only warfare that they refuse to discuss. Their silence is specific and deliberate. Director Velshan leaned forward, her dark eyes narrowing. Have you considered that they may feel shame about their military history? Some species carry guilt about past conflicts, especially if those conflicts involved acts they now regret. That was my second hypothesis, Kelvon replied. But it does not fit what I have observed. When combat is mentioned, humans do not show the body language of shame. They do not look away. They do not become defensive. Instead, they show something else. Something I cannot identify. What do you mean? Kelvon struggled to find the right words. It is as if they are carrying a heavy weight. Not shame, but something deeper. Something they do not wish to put down because putting it down would mean asking others to carry it. The instructors exchanged uncertain glances. I attempted to find more information, Kelvon continued. I tried to access detailed records of human military history through the Galactic Archive. What I found was strange. He brought up another screen showing a database entry. Most of the text was blocked out by red classification markers. The archive confirms that humans have engaged in many conflicts throughout their history, but the details are sealed. Every attempt I made to access specific information was blocked by something called Protocol 17. Director Velshan sat up straighter. Her expression changed from curiosity to concern. You are certain it said Protocol 17? Yes, Director. Is that significant? Protocol designations are rare, she explained to the room. They are used only when information is considered dangerous to galactic stability. Protocol 17 specifically indicates information that could cause psychological harm to those who learn it. The room fell silent. Kelvon felt his scales shift to an anxious blue. Why would human military history be classified under such a protocol? Asked Instructor Sooth the Velian. What could they have done that would harm others just by knowing about it? No one had an answer. Director Velshan stood, her tall frame casting a shadow across the table. This matter is more serious than I expected. Kelvan, I want you to continue your observations, but do not approach the human cadets directly about this topic. I will submit a formal inquiry to the Human Alliance delegation. If there is information about human psychology that affects how we train their soldiers, we have a right to know. She looked around the room at each instructor in turn. Until we receive a response, I ask everyone to keep this discussion private. We do not want to alarm the cadets of any species, and we do not want the humans to know we are investigating them. Everyone agreed. As the meeting ended and the instructors filed out, Kelvan remained behind. He stared at the blocked-out database entry on the screen. Protocol 17, Psychological Harm. What could possibly be so terrible that even knowing about it was considered dangerous? He thought about Nathan Cole and Daniel Price and Megan Walsh. He thought about their quiet voices and their careful silences. He thought about the weight they seemed to carry. For the first time, Kelvan felt something he had not expected. He felt afraid. Not afraid of the humans themselves, but afraid of what their silence might mean. Afraid of what secrets might be hidden behind those tired eyes and polite smiles. 3 weeks later, an unmarked human ship arrived at Station Verath 7, and Kelvan learned that his fear had been justified. The ship arrived without warning on a quiet morning. Station Verath 7 received thousands of vessels every year, but this one was different. It was old and plain, painted in dull gray colors with no markings or flags. The registration codes that the ship broadcast were strange. The station's computers took a long time to verify them, and even then the information that came back was incomplete. Kelvan was in his office when Director Velshan contacted him. Her voice through the communication system was calm, but he could hear tension underneath. "Come to secure briefing room 4 immediately," she said. "Bring nothing. Tell no one." His scales turned worried yellow as he hurried through the station's corridors. Secure briefing room 4 was in the restricted section, a place used only for classified meetings and sensitive discussions. In his 40 years at the academy, Kelvan had been inside that room only twice. When he arrived, Director Velshan was already there, along with 2 other senior instructors. But his attention was drawn immediately to the 3 strangers standing at the far end of the room. They were human, 2 women and 1 man, all wearing simple gray uniforms with no badges or rank symbols. Their faces were calm in a way that seemed practiced, as if they had learned long ago to hide what they were feeling. There was something in their eyes that Kelvan recognized from the human cadets, only stronger. A deep tiredness, a heavy weight. The lead human was a woman who looked to be in her 50s, though Kelvan knew that human ages were hard to judge. She had short gray hair and brown eyes that moved slowly around the room, taking in everything and everyone. "Thank you for meeting with us," she said. Her voice was soft but carried authority. "My name is Catherine Sullivan. These are my colleagues, Samuel Grant and Lisa Carter. We are here to respond to your inquiry about human combat psychology." Director Velshan nodded formally. "We appreciate your quick response. We simply wish to understand why human cadets do not participate in standard warrior bonding rituals. Their silence creates social difficulties with other species." Catherine Sullivan smiled slightly, but there was no humor in it. "We know why they do not share. What we need to determine first is whether you truly want to know the answer." Kelvan felt his scales shift to uncertain blue. "I do not understand. Why would we not want to know?" The 3 humans exchanged a look. In that single glance, Kelvan saw an entire conversation happen between them. They were deciding something, making a choice. Catherine turned back to face the alien instructors. "Director Velshan, you are Meldari. Your species has existed for over 20,000 years. In that time, how many major wars has your civilization fought? The director seemed surprised by the question. Approximately 37 significant conflicts are recorded in our history. And you, Instructor Kelvan, the Torvian people, how many major wars? Kelvan thought carefully. Our records show perhaps 50 or 60 large conflicts over 12,000 years of civilization. Catherine nodded slowly. The Crixians have fought approximately 200 major wars over their 8,000-year history. The Anthean have records of about 90. These numbers are consistent with most species in the galaxy. She paused, and the room seemed to grow colder. Before humans developed faster-than-light travel and joined the galactic community, our civilization existed for roughly 10,000 years. How many major wars do you believe we fought in that time? Director Velshan considered. Based on the patterns we see in other species, I would estimate 100 to 200 significant conflicts. 143 is the number listed in your galactic archive, Kelvan added. I saw it when I searched for human military history. Catherine shook her head slowly. The movement was small, but it carried enormous weight. The actual number is over 11,000, she said quietly. We stopped counting the smaller conflicts because there were too many to track. The room went completely silent. Samuel Grant stepped forward. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and scars on his hands that spoke of years of physical labor or combat or both. What you see in your archive is a simplified version of our history. The full truth was classified under Protocol 17 because of what happened when we first shared it with other species. What happened? Kelvan heard himself ask. 3 different research teams from 3 different species were assigned to study human military history in detail, Samuel explained. All 3 teams experienced severe psychological damage. 2 of them required memory alteration therapy to function normally again. The 3rd team requested to have the information completely removed from their minds. Director Velshan's large, dark eyes went wide. That is not possible. We have studied the military histories of species that committed genocide, species that destroyed entire worlds. Our scholars have never been damaged by historical knowledge. Other species fight wars the way children play games, Lisa Carter said. She was the youngest of the 3 humans, but her voice carried the same tired weight as her companions. Serious, yes. Deadly, yes. But with rules, with limits, with pauses between conflicts to recover and reflect. She looked directly at Kelvan, and he felt pinned by her gaze. Humans do not fight wars that way. We never have. For us, war was not something that happened occasionally. It was a constant state. While one war ended, 3 more were beginning. We developed weapons designed specifically to kill as many of our own species as possible in the shortest amount of time. We refined the art of destruction over thousands of years until we became something that should not exist. Catherine Sullivan reached into her jacket and pulled out a small data chip. She placed it on the table between them. This contains a summary of human military history, not the full details, but enough to answer your questions. Before we give you access, everyone in this room must agree to a Class 4 information restriction. What you learn cannot be shared with anyone not present in this room. The consequences for breaking this restriction are severe under both human and galactic law. Kelvan looked at the tiny chip. It seemed harmless, just a piece of technology smaller than his claw. But he could feel the weight of what it contained, the weight that the humans carried every day. Why would you classify your own history? He asked. Catherine met his eyes. We classified it to protect other species from the truth about what we are. Our soldiers do not boast about their battles because they understand what boasting would mean. It would mean being proud of skills that we developed through endless suffering. It would mean celebrating a heritage built on more blood than any other species in the galaxy has ever spilled. She pushed the chip slightly toward them. You wanted to understand why humans are quiet. The answer is in this chip. But I am asking you one more time. Are you certain you want to know? Director Velshan looked at Kelvon. He looked back at her. Neither spoke, but they both understood. They had come too far to turn back now. Yes, Director Velshan said. We are certain. Catherine Sullivan nodded. Her expression held no satisfaction, only sadness. Then let us begin. Catherine Sullivan inserted the data chip into the room's display system. The holographic projector hummed to life, and suddenly the center of the room was filled with images that Kelvon would never be able to forget. A planet appeared first, blue and green and white, beautiful in the way that all living worlds were beautiful. Earth, the human homeworld. Then the overlays began. Red marks appeared on the surface of the planet. Each mark represented a conflict. At first, there were only a few scattered across the continents. But as the display moved forward through time, the marks multiplied. They spread like a disease. They overlapped and combined until entire regions glowed solid red. This is a time-lapse view of human conflict over 10,000 years, Samuel Grant explained. His voice was flat, as if he was describing something ordinary. Each red mark represents a war that killed at least 1,000 people. The brighter the mark, the higher the death count. Kelvon watched in horror as the planet became covered in light. Some areas flashed so bright they hurt his eyes. The display showed numbers in the corner, climbing higher and higher. Millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. The total death count from human warfare before we achieved space travel exceeds 2 billion individuals, Catherine said. That number does not include those who died from disease, famine, or displacement caused by war. If we added those, the number would be much higher. Director Velshan made a small sound of distress. Her species was telepathic among themselves, and Kelvon wondered if she could feel the emotional weight of what she was seeing. How is this possible? The director asked. How did your species survive such constant conflict? Lisa Carter stepped forward. That is exactly the right question. The answer is that we adapted. Not physically, but mentally. Humans developed psychological mechanisms to survive continuous warfare. We learned to compartmentalize trauma. We learned to function while carrying wounds that would break other species. She gestured, and the display changed. Now it showed diagrams of brain structures and psychological concepts. Other species experience war as a crisis, an emergency state that requires recovery time before normal function can resume. Humans experience war as normal. Our baseline mental state includes the constant awareness that violence is possible at any moment. We are never truly at peace inside our own minds. Catherine took over the explanation. We call this generational trauma. The experiences of our ancestors do not stay in the past. They pass down through families, through cultures, through our very identity. Every human alive today carries the psychological weight of 11,000 wars. It is built into how we think, how we react, how we see the world. Kelvon's scales had stopped changing color. They were locked in a shade of gray that indicated deep shock. But the human cadets seem normal. They function well. They even seem kind. They are kind, Samuel said. That is perhaps the strangest part of our psychology. Despite everything, or perhaps because of everything, humans developed strong drives toward compassion and cooperation. We learned that cruelty breeds more cruelty. We learned that the only way to survive our own violent nature was to build systems that encouraged peace. He smiled, but it was a sad smile. We are both the most violent and the most compassionate species in the galaxy. The contradiction exists inside every one of us. Catherine changed the display again. This time it showed images of human soldiers from different time periods, ancient warriors with swords, medieval knights in armor, modern soldiers with guns and machines. When a Crixian warrior kills an enemy, they feel triumph. Their culture celebrates the kill. It brings honor to their family and their hive. The psychological experience is positive. She paused. When a human kills an enemy, the experience is different. We feel relief that we survived. We feel grief that someone died, even if that someone was trying to kill us. We feel uncertainty about whether the killing was truly necessary. And underneath all of that, we feel fear. Fear that we will have to do it again. Fear that we are becoming something we do not want to be. This is why humans do not boast, Lisa added. Boasting requires pride. Pride requires believing that what you did was good and right. But humans have learned, through thousands of years of bitter experience, that what feels right in the moment of battle often looks very different later. Today's hero is tomorrow's war criminal. Today's just cause is tomorrow's shameful mistake. Director Vel Shan had recovered enough to ask another question. You said that other species were damaged by learning your full history. How? What happens to them? Catherine's expression became even more serious. They cannot reconcile the contradiction. When researchers from other species study human history in detail, they see both extremes. They see acts of cruelty that go beyond anything in their own histories. They see weapons designed to cause maximum suffering. They see betrayals and atrocities that seem impossible for intelligent beings to commit. But they also see the opposite, Samuel continued. They see humans risking their lives to save strangers. They see art and music and philosophy created during the worst periods of suffering. They see love and kindness existing right next to hatred and violence. The two things cannot fit together in their minds. Lisa spoke softly. One Anthian researcher described it as trying to hold two opposite truths at the same time. She said it felt like her mind was tearing in half. She had to have the memories removed to function normally again. Kelvin thought about the human cadets he had watched for so many years. He thought about Nathan Cole, who read quietly in corners and helped younger cadets without asking for thanks. He thought about Daniel Price, who had survived impossible horrors and called them nothing worth telling. You carry this knowledge every day, he said slowly. Every human knows these things about your species. How do you survive it? Catherine looked at him for a long moment before answering. We grew up with it. The knowledge was not given to us all at once. We absorbed it gradually, through stories and history lessons and family memories. We learned to live with the contradiction because we had no other choice. She turned off the display. The room returned to normal light, but nothing felt normal anymore. Human soldiers do not share war stories because they understand the true cost of what they have done. They stay silent because they know that pride in violence leads to more violence. Every quiet human cadet you see is making a choice. They are choosing not to pass on the disease of glory. They are choosing to let the cycle end with them. It is not humility, Samuel said. It is not shame. It is mercy, Lisa finished. We stay silent to protect others from becoming what we are. Kelvin felt something warm on his face. He reached up and found moisture there. He was crying. He had not cried since he was a child. He finally understood. And the understanding changed everything. The human delegation left Station Verath 7 the next morning. Their unmarked ship departed as quietly as it had arrived, disappearing into the vastness of space without ceremony or farewell. They had delivered their message and fulfilled their duty. There was nothing more to say. Kelvin did not sleep that night. He sat alone in his quarters, staring at the wall, letting the weight of what he had learned settle into his bones. His scales remained the same dull gray for hours, too exhausted by emotion to change. When morning came, he reported for duty as usual. The training halls were already filled with cadets from a dozen species, running drills and practicing combat formations. Everything looked the same as it had before. The Crixians still boasted loudly between exercises. The Antheans still clicked their mandibles in quiet pride. The Meldari still moved with the calm confidence of those who believed in their cause. And in the corner, as always, the humans were quiet. Kelvon watched Lieutenant Commander Nathan Cole lead a group of mixed-species cadets through morning exercises. The human moved with precision and patience, correcting mistakes gently, offering encouragement when needed. When a young Crixian stumbled during a difficult maneuver, Nathan helped him up without comment, without mockery, without any sign of judgment. After the morning session ended, Kelvon found himself walking toward the observation deck on the outer ring of the station. It was a place where people came to think, to look at the stars and find peace in the infinite darkness. He was not surprised to find Nathan Cole already there, standing alone by the windows. The human turned when he heard footsteps. His face shifted smoothly into polite attention. "Instructor, good morning." "Good morning, Lieutenant Commander." Kelvon moved to stand beside him. Together they looked out at the endless field of stars. "I came here to think. It seems you had the same idea." Nathan nodded slowly. "It helps sometimes. Looking out there, remembering how big everything is, how small our problems are in comparison." Kelvon's scales shifted to a soft blue, a color of honesty and openness. "The delegation told us about your history, about why your people stay silent." Something flickered in Nathan's eyes. Surprise, then caution, then a careful acceptance. "I thought they might. When we heard there was an official inquiry, we knew someone would eventually send people to explain." "How much did they tell you we would learn?" "Enough." Nathan's voice was quiet. "Enough to understand. Enough to change how you see us." They stood in silence for a moment. Around them, the station hummed with the sounds of life and machinery. Outside, the stars burned in their eternal patterns, unconcerned with the small dramas of mortal creatures. "I want you to know something," Kelvon said finally. "I do not see you as monsters. I see you as something else entirely." Nathan turned to look at him. "And what is that?" Kelvon thought carefully about his words. "Survivors. Wounded survivors who carry their pain quietly so that others might be spared. I see warriors who have learned that true strength is not in the arm that strikes, but in the heart that holds back." Nathan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion he was trying to control. "We do not want recognition, sir. We do not need medals or praise for staying silent. We just want the next generation to be better than we were. That is all any of us want. To break the cycle, to end the disease of glory before it spreads to our children." "Then let me help you," Kelvon said. He reached out and placed a clawed hand on the human's shoulder. It was a gesture of respect that crossed the boundaries of species. "Let me teach these cadets what you have taught me. Not the details of your history, but the wisdom you have earned from it." Nathan looked at the alien instructor. For the first time since arriving at the academy, his careful mask slipped. Beneath it, Kelvon saw exhaustion and grief and hope all mixed together. He saw a man who had been carrying an impossible weight for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to share it. "What would you teach them?" Nathan asked. "I would teach them to question their victories, to remember that the enemy is also someone's child, to understand that pride in killing leads only to more killing." Kelvon's scales shifted to a deep purple, the color of solemn promises. "Your people have learned these lessons through suffering that my species cannot imagine. The least we can do is receive your wisdom with gratitude." Nathan nodded slowly. His throat moved as he swallowed hard. "We would like that, sir. We would like that very much." In the weeks that followed, Kelvon quietly changed his training methods. He did not share the classified information with his colleagues. He honored the restriction he had agreed to, but he found ways to teach the spirit of what he had learned without revealing the details. He asked cadets to reflect after combat exercises, not just on what they did right, but on what they could have avoided. He encouraged them to think about their enemies as individuals rather than targets. He introduced the concept of victory that did not require destroying the other side completely. Some cadets resisted. The Crixians especially found this approach confusing. Their culture celebrated killing, and they did not understand why they should question their triumphs. But others listened. The Anthean, with their hive mind focused on the long-term survival of their species, found wisdom in the human approach. The Meldari, who could feel the emotions of their own kind, began to question whether their enemies might have similar feelings worth considering. And the humans, the quiet ones who had always stood apart, began to engage. Nathan Cole started sharing not stories of battles won, but lessons learned from mistakes. Megan Walsh spoke of situations where killing had been necessary, but not celebrated. Daniel Price, the survivor of the siege of Callisto Station, finally talked about those 47 terrible days. He talked about the friends he lost and the choices that haunted him. He talked about why there was nothing worth boasting about in survival bought with so much death. The other cadets listened. Slowly, gradually, something new began to grow at the Galactic Military Academy. Not just warriors, but guardians. Not just killers, but protectors who understood the weight of what they might someday have to do. Years later, when Kelvon was old and his scales had faded to pale colors, he wrote a final report on his observations of human psychology. He did not include the classified information. He simply wrote what he had learned. True warriors do not boast of their battles. They mourn them. And in that mourning, they become something more than killers. They become the last defense against the darkness that lives in every heart. They become the ones who say enough, no more, not again. The humans taught the galaxy this lesson. They taught it through their silence, through their patience, through their refusal to celebrate the violence that lived in their blood. And the galaxy slowly began to listen.